The morning sun blazed red over Vopnafjörður Bay, and Gus Gústafsson's head was swimming. Blood pounded in his ears like the waves beating the nearby shore, and an icy shudder passed through his body, for his clothes were soaked with dew where he lay upon the sod. What was he doing here, he wondered. As he rose unsteadily to his feet, he fought to recall what had occurred the night before. He knew he had been out for his evening stroll along the beach when he saw something fall from the sky, and it struck a hilltop only a few hundred meters distant. When he then ventured inland to investigate, he had discovered a fresh crater, but the object resting at its center was unlike any meteorite he had ever seen. The strange thing was crystalline in structure, but followed an unearthly geometry, and it glowed in a color he couldn't identify, as though light were refracting through impossible angles. Gus knew not what this queer thing was, nor how it could be, but its extraordinary nature seemed to beckon to him like a siren. He could only watch, mesmerized in horror, as his arm reached out to touch the scintillant quasi-crystal. A blinding flash followed, then darkness, and now here he was, still atop the hill overlooking the bay, but the crater was nowhere to be seen. Where had it gone? Was it ever there in the first place? He reeled and clasped a hand to his aching temple as the memory kept repeating itself in his mind. It was incredibly detailed, but impossibly strange. What had happened? Had it happened? Had it all been some bizarre dream? He cast a bleary eye around, searching his surroundings for any evidence to the contrary. When he found none, another shudder passed through him, but this one was brought about not by the morning chill. This one was born of fear. Existential dread presented Gus with two distinct possibilities. If his memories were real, then he could have easily been killed by the falling object. But if they were nothing more than a figment of his imagination, which the dearth of evidence now seemed to suggest, how could he be sure that anything was real? Was he real? The throbbing pain in his temple certainly indicated as much, and grappling with this philosophical quandary wasn't doing it any favors. Thus, with a weary shake of his head, he cast the gloom from his mind, then stretched, yawned, and trudged back toward town. Although Vopnafjörður had been his home since birth, Gus felt upon arriving as though he were seeing it for the first time, looking out through a fresh pair of eyes. The entire place somehow seemed livelier, with a youthful exuberance. The colors were more vibrant, and the surfaces less worn. This unexpected freshness caused him to once again question reality. His pondering abruptly ceased, however, when he realized that it was not the world which had changed, but rather his perception of it. The events of the previous night were a strange and frightening mystery, but whatever they may have been, they had granted him a new perspective. With a reminder of his own mortality fresh in his mind, Gus Gústafsson felt happier to be alive on this morning than he ever had before. He therefore decided to celebrate life in the best way he knew how, and it didn't take long to find someone to celebrate it with. She was a honey blonde with eyes like hurricanes, and neither an elf nor a troll, but attractive in a simple, humble way. The sight of her caused his heartbeat to quicken, and in the space of a dozen rapid pulses he hailed her and introduced himself. "Gus Gústafsson?" She let out a snigger of disbelief. "That must have created some confusion around the house growing up, having the same name as your father." Gus chuckled politely, but looked away. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize your relationship was a sensitive subject." "It's not sensitive," he assured her. "It's not existent. I only know the man from a single photograph and what my mother has told me. According to her, he was just a one-night stand who left me with nothing but his name and his good looks." Gus snorted and rolled his eyes. "Oh, now I'm sorry. I'm blathering on, and you probably have no interest in a stranger's life story. Sorry to bore you." "No need to apologize. It's not a bad story." She smiled and brushed the loose hair from her face. "And besides, Gus is a handsome name, and those looks aren't so bad either. I'm Anna." "Now that is a pretty name," Gus grinned, "but it's got nothing on your looks." "Thank you," she said, blushing as red as the morning sun. "Now I suppose it's my turn to bore you with my life story, if you'll hear it." "I can think of no way I'd rather be bored," he replied with a wink. "Come on, I know a cozy little coffee-house where I'll tell you all about it." That was how it began, with coffee. Coffee then turned into a movie turned into dinner, and dinner turned into a night out on the town with dancing, drinking, a walk on the beach, and a snapshot by the old pier before retiring to her home. It was a wonderful day, followed by a wild night of joy, laughter, carefree abandon, and uninhibited passion. When Gus awoke, Anna was gone. Or rather, he was gone. The morning sun was blazing red over Vopnafjörður Bay, and he was once again lying on the hilltop, soaked with dew, with his pulse pounding in his ears. This time, however, a crater was there as well. The alien object was absent from its center, but by the presence of the crater alone, Gus reasoned that everything which had happened since he last awoke had merely been a fantastically vivid dream. This is what he told himself as he trekked back to his house, rubbing his aching eyes and struggling to clear his head all the way. Once inside, he headed straight to the bedroom for a dry change of clothes and a warm blanket, but he saw something in the hallway which froze him in his tracks. It was the sole photograph of both of his parents, hanging on the wall as it always had. He'd seen it 1,000 times before, but now he could scarcely believe his eyes. How had he never noticed before? The young woman in his father's arms was Anna, and the man embracing her, the man whom Gus had always identified as his father, was him.